Under a bruised sky streaked with twilight's last embers, the old stone arch of Goatman's bridge loomed like a dark sentinel over a murky stream. For as long as anyone in the small town of Eddingsbrook could remember, whispers of a cursed creature had haunted its legend. They said that on moonless nights, when the wind whispered secrets among the trees, a half-man, half-goat figure would emerge from the shadows, his eyes gleaming with a hunger that defied mortal reason. Evelyn had grown up on these tales. As a child, she would huddle beneath her blankets while her grandmother recounted the grim fate of those who dared cross the bridge at night. The warnings were always the same: never provoke the wrath of the Goatman, never linger near the cursed structure after sundown. Yet now, at 26, Evelyn's skepticism warred with a deep-seated curiosity. Determined to confront her childhood terrors, she arranged a midnight rendezvous with a few friends, Alex, Mark, and Lila, who were equally fascinated by the macabre folklore. They met at the edge of town as dusk yielded reluctantly to night. The air was cool and laden with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. With flashlights and a shared sense of daring, they embarked on the short trek through the dense woodland that led to Goatman's bridge. The forest seemed to close in around them. The towering oaks and gnarled pines formed a cathedral of natural stone, their branches clawing at the night sky. As they advanced, the laughter and chatter among the friends slowly dwindled into uneasy silence. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the underbrush made their hearts pound faster. The path, faintly lit by the intermittent beams of their flashlights, twisted like a labyrinth. Evelyn's mind raced with thoughts of the legends, a creature born of curse and revenge, doomed to roam the boundary between the living and the dead. At last, the group reached a clearing where the old bridge emerged from the darkness. It was a relic of another age, its weathered stones slick with moss and the remnants of a once grand inscription, now barely legible. The bridge spanned a stream that gurgled like an ancient incantation. Here, the air was different, a palpable heaviness that seemed to warp the very fabric of reality. "Do you feel that?" whispered Lila, her voice trembling as she shone her light over the structure. Alex scanned the bridge with a mixture of fascination and dread. "It's like the place is alive," he murmured. Evelyn stepped forward, compelled by a force she couldn't explain. "There's something here," she said softly. "Something that's been waiting for us." Her voice, though steady, betrayed an undercurrent of fear. The legend of the Goatman had always been a story to scare children, but here, in the presence of the ancient bridge, the myth felt all too real. They decided to cross the bridge, each step resonating like a final heartbeat in a long-forgotten tale. As they reached the center, the temperature plummeted abruptly. The once muted sound of the stream became a cacophony of hissing whispers, as though unseen lips were murmuring ominous warnings. Mark's eyes widened in terror when, out of the corner of his vision, he thought he saw a figure dart behind a pillar of crumbling stone. "Did you see that?" he gasped, but the others only exchanged nervous glances. The silence was shattered by a low, guttural sound, a deep, resonant bellow that vibrated through the stones beneath their feet. It was as if the very ground had spoken, unleashing a sound older than time. In that instant, the beam of Alex's flashlight trembled, and its flickering light revealed a horrific sight, a hulking silhouette at the far end of the bridge, half hidden by the shadows. Creature's form was grotesque, a contorted mass of sinew and bone, with the distorted face of a man fused with the head of a goat. Its eyes burned with an unholy fire that illuminated the darkness like twin infernos. Panic erupted. Mark staggered backward, colliding with Lila, whose scream pierced the night as they both fled. Evelyn, however, stood transfixed, caught in a strange mix of terror and fascination. Creature, the Goatman, slowly advanced, its hooves clacking against the ancient stones. Each step was measured and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world to savor the moment of its hunt. In the ensuing chaos, the friends scattered in different directions. Alex dashed into the forest, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of leaves. Mark, eyes wide with disbelief, ran toward a cluster of trees, while Lila's panicked cries echoed as she disappeared into the darkness. Evelyn, paralyzed by a compulsion she couldn't overcome, took one more step toward the creature. Time seemed to slow as the Goatman's milky eyes locked with hers. In that fleeting moment, Evelyn sensed an overwhelming sorrow behind those monstrous eyes, a tortured soul trapped in an eternal cycle of damnation. Creature halted its advance and emitted a mournful, almost human wail that resonated deep within Evelyn's bones. It was a sound that spoke of centuries of anguish, of a life shattered by betrayal and loss. For a brief moment, the horror of the situation was replaced by a profound empathy. Evelyn felt compelled to understand, to reach out to this tortured being rather than run away like the others. "Who are you?" she managed to whisper, her voice trembling yet imbued with an unexpected tenderness. The Goatman's gaze softened imperceptibly, and for a moment the night seemed to hold its breath. Then, as if the weight of the curse was too much to bear any longer, the creature turned away and vanished into the swirling mists along the bank. Evelyn's heart pounded in her ears as she hesitated, torn between following the creature and searching for her friends. Driven by a strange resolve, she followed the fading silhouette along a narrow, overgrown path that led deeper into the woods. Trees grew denser here, their twisted branches forming eerie arches that filtered the moonlight into ghostly patterns. Every step deepened the silence, and the only sound was the soft crunch of dead leaves underfoot. The path wound through ancient groves and derelict clearings until Evelyn found herself at the entrance to a dilapidated farmhouse. Its windows were dark, and the door hung ajar, creaking with every gust of wind. Something about the place felt profoundly wrong, a nexus of despair and forsaken memories. Despite her growing apprehension, Evelyn pressed on, drawn by a compulsion she could neither explain nor resist. Inside, the air was stale and heavy with decay. Dust motes danced in the weak beams of moonlight that filtered through cracked windows. Faded photographs hung crookedly on the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow her every move. In a small parlor, Evelyn discovered a diary, its leather cover worn and fragile. The entries detailed a heartbreaking tale of love, betrayal, and a curse that had condemned the family to a fate intertwined with the very bridge she had just left behind. The diary spoke of a man who had dared to defy the natural order, a man who had sought forbidden knowledge and paid the ultimate price. He had been transformed, his humanity eroded and replaced by a monstrous form that could only be described as a grotesque hybrid. Text was filled with desperate pleas for forgiveness and warnings about the dark forces unleashed by his hubris. Evelyn's hands trembled as she turned the fragile pages, each word echoing the lament of a soul lost to time. Sighed, the wind began to howl with a ferocity that seemed almost sentient. Evelyn clutched the diary to her chest, her mind racing with questions. Who was this tormented being? Had he truly been cursed by his own ambition? And more importantly, was there a way to break the cycle of suffering that bound him to Goatman's bridge? Before she could ponder further, a sudden noise snapped her attention to the front door. Heavy footsteps echoed on the creaking wooden boards, accompanied by the low, resonant sound of a bell, an ominous chime that seemed to herald doom. The door swung open with a violent lurch, and there, framed in the doorway, stood the Goatman. But now, he appeared even more tragic than before, a figure caught between man and monster, his eyes brimming with an endless sorrow.
"Why do you linger here?"
His voice a guttural mix of pain and longing. There was no malice in his tone, only an ache that transcended the boundaries of horror. Evelyn's heart clenched at the sound, and she stepped forward despite her terror. "I want to understand," she said softly, her voice echoing in the barren room. "I want to help you find peace." For a moment, time seemed to suspend. The Goatman's grotesque visage softened further, as if her words had reached a hidden part of his soul. Slowly, he moved aside, beckoning her to come closer. In a trembling whisper, he recounted the tale of his doomed transformation, how he had been a humble farmer who had once loved deeply, only to have his life upended by a betrayal so profound that it summoned ancient, vengeful forces. His curse was not one of pure evil, but of a tragic misfortune wrought by human frailty and supernatural retribution. As he spoke, the shadows in the room deepened, coalescing around them like a living shroud. Evelyn listened with rapt attention, her fear mingling with pity. In that dim, forgotten farmhouse, the boundaries between monster and victim blurred, leaving only the raw, aching truth of a cursed existence. Yet, even as empathy stirred within her, the pressing need to save her friends clawed at her conscience. She pleaded with the Goatman. "I need to find my friends. They're out there, lost in the darkness. Please help me." His eyes, reflecting centuries of regret, met hers.
There is a way, but it comes at a terrible cost. The curse that binds me to this branch, to this life, is entwined with the very souls of those who cross it.
He explained that the bridge was a threshold, a boundary between worlds, and that every soul that dared cross it unwittingly fed the curse, deepening its malevolent power. To break it, one would have to confront the darkest parts of one's own heart and relinquish the ties that bound them to the past. Evelyn's mind reeled with the implications. Saving her friends might mean sacrificing a piece of herself, confronting the demons of her own history. Before she could inquire further, a distant scream shattered the heavy silence. The sound, raw and desperate, tore through the oppressive atmosphere and spurred Evelyn into action. "I have to go," she said, her voice trembling with urgency. The Goatman nodded solemnly.
Follow the path along the stream. It will lead you to them, but beware, once you cross the threshold of the bridge, you may never be the same.
Clutching the diary and the memory of the Goatman's mournful eyes, Evelyn raced back into the night. The forest was a maze of twisting shadows and deceptive light, and every rustle, every whisper of wind felt like a portent of doom. She stumbled over gnarled roots and sidestepped unseen obstacles as she followed the sound of anguished cries. Soon, she found herself at the edge of the stream again, its waters churning as though agitated by an unseen presence. There, in a small clearing bathed in pale moonlight, she discovered Alex and Mark huddled together, their faces etched with terror. Lila was nowhere to be seen. "We heard her scream," Alex stammered, his eyes wild. Then the Goatman appeared and everything went dark. Mark's voice was barely audible as he recounted how the creature's cry had been both a dirge and a warning. Evelyn's heart pounded as she explained what had happened, the diary, the farmhouse, the plea for understanding. The three friends exchanged anxious glances, the gravity of the situation dawning on them. They realized that the curse was more than just a ghost story. It was a malignant force that ensnared anyone who dared approach the bridge. In that moment, they made a pact. Together, they would find a way to break the curse, to free not only the tormented Goatman but also the souls of those lost to its dark influence. Their journey led them back to Goatman's bridge, this time armed with the knowledge gleaned from the diary and a newfound determination. Under a sky bruised with the first hints of dawn, the four of them, Evelyn, Alex, Mark, and the spirit of the Goatman that lingered in their hearts, stood before the ancient structure. With trembling resolve, they recited the words from the diary, invoking the ancient rite that might sever the curse's hold. The bridge trembled as if in response, and a blinding light surged from its depths. Shadows writhed and coalesced into phantoms that wailed like lost souls. The air vibrated with a chorus of voices, sorrow, anger, and hope intermingled in a spectral symphony. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stand still as the curse fought against its inevitable undoing. When the light finally faded, the oppressive weight that had long haunted the bridge had lifted. In its place, a fragile peace seemed to settle, a quiet promise of redemption. The Goatman's tormented visage appeared one last time, his eyes now filled with gratitude and relief.
You have set us free.
His voice a gentle echo in the crisp morning air. As the sun rose over Eddingsbrook, bathing the landscape in golden light, Evelyn and her friends stood together on the bridge, forever changed by the night's horrors. The legend of Goatman's Bridge would live on, not as a tale of unending terror, but as a reminder of the enduring power of compassion and the courage to confront one's deepest fears. In the days that followed, the cursed bridge stood silent and serene, a monument to a night when darkness and light clashed in a battle for the soul. And though the memory of that night would forever haunt their dreams, Evelyn, Alex, Mark, and even the spirit of the Goatman found solace in knowing that sometimes the scariest stories hide within them the seeds of hope and redemption. Thus, the curse was lifted, leaving behind not a trail of devastation, but a testament to the resilience of the human heart, a heart capable of compassion even in the face of unspeakable horror.
That's it for tonight's tale. But don't worry, there's always more where that came from. Be sure to stay tuned for even more nerve-thrilling horror stories every single week. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join us here at the Hollow Horror. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, stay safe. Or stay scared. See you next time.